if you're going to get into this bespoke filmmaking business, if you are going to get into this live streaming, keeping it real, Q&A type business, you have to be willing to recognize a good question when it comes from a bad person. You have to be willing to recognize a good question when it is posed to you in bad terms, shall we say, when it is poorly phrased, poorly enunciated. You need to be able to respond to a question that's posed to you with bad motivations as if it were posed with good motivations, or find within it the best possible motivation for you to respond to. So I got a question. I'm going to paraphrase this question. I am not going to quote this. I'm not going to read you word for word this question. But I got a question demanding to know how it is, why it is, I feel entitled to the love of beautiful women. Why it is I feel entitled to the love of women, plural apparently, far more attractive than myself, including the one woman singular that all of you have seen on my Instagram, Melissa, who's sitting off camera right here. You know, how is it? Why is it I feel in this sense entitled? You know what? It's a good question. And it comes from a bad person with bad intentions and bad motivations. And it was poorly phrased too. And I think this person is, frankly, jealous that he cannot be with Melissa instead of myself. I think he might be jealous of a great many of the women in my life, past, present, and future. But Melissa in particular, I think there's a little bit of jealousy. I think there's a little bit of envy. And I think there's also a lot of forcible misinterpretation of things I have said on my YouTube channel in the past in order to make me seem unreasonable in giving the advice I've given and offering the reflections I've offered. But nevertheless, okay, keep it all the way real with you guys. And I always like to start off at the deepest end of the swimming pool on these issues. All right? Nobody is entitled to anybody's love. And this is one of the really distinctive features of love that sets it apart from any other kind of emotion and any other kind of relationship between two human beings. You can say, I am entitled to your respect. You can say, I am entitled to be treated with a certain level of dignity. You can say, I am entitled to your time in all kinds of different relationships. And you may have to fight for that. You know, you might be talking to someone who's a surgeon and they say, hey, look, you know, I performed heart surgery 50 times this year. So you've got to respect. I'm entitled to your respect. You may be talking to your professors and they may not want to deal with you. And you have to say, look, I paid you $10,000 and this is your contract and these are your office hours and this is who I am. I'm entitled to your time. I'm entitled to your patience. There are entitlements for pretty much every other relationship between human beings except love. You can never be entitled to someone else's love. Not in the particular, not in general. Not one person's love, not 100 people's love, not 1,000 people's love. Never. Okay? Love is never earned, and it's something you never have a title to. That's the meaning of being entitled. It's always undeserved. It's always something above and beyond anything you could ever earn, you could ever deserve. That's love. Melissa's finding this quite moving. It's interesting. You have to know what you're thinking about it. All right. Now this has a positive and negative side. This is a blade that cuts both ways. Okay. You're not entitled to your parents' love. No, you're not. You're entitled to respect from your parents. You're entitled to dignity. You're entitled to a certain level of support, which is actually disputed in different countries legally. How much your parents have to do for you if they hate you. It's quite different from one kind of thing. You can look into it. It's an interesting area of the law. People sometimes sue their parents, and parents sometimes sue their children. Typical scenario. You have a father who's very heterosexual, cares about sports and military service. He has a son who is gay and interested in the liberal arts, let's say. Let's happen to one of my brothers. I have one of my many brothers is gay. He's a half brother. He was adopted. He was raised by apparently a macho architect who hated him all his life, could never get along with him. The guy was an architect. He wasn't an army general. He wasn't a football hero. Still, he was still in the arts when you think about it. Might be able to get on. There were a lot of gay people working in architecture. Let's be honest here, folks. Interior design and so on. But nevertheless, this gay half-brother of mine, he grew up with his father was some kind of macho architect. And, they just could not make that father-son relationship work. Man, that's unusual. Sorry, getting a troll writing in Chinese or a spam message, I guess. I'm not sure what they're trying to sell. Anyway, sorry. Nice distraction. Yeah. Nice distraction to have. Look, there's no way anyone is ever entitled to anyone's love. And if you know enough people, if you have enough experience in life, you'll actually see people who are in the reverse situation. There are lesbian couples who give birth to and raise a heterosexual child and find themselves estranged from their child. There are gay men. I have known this. There are gay men who one way or another have and raise a child despite being gay men, and they feel like they can't relate to their child. And there are parents who are conservative and right-wing, and their kids become left-wing, and there are parents who are left-wing, and their kids become conservative. Oh, and let's just trot out one example that's easy for all of you to relate to. You could be a parent who is vegan, and your kid eats meat and makes excuses for it. You can be a parent who's a devout Hindu and your kid becomes a Muslim. There are all these combinations and permutations. Even the love that exists between a parent and a child is something you can never be entitled to. It's something you can never demand. And it's something you can never even earn. That's the greatest tragedy of all. There are so many people who spend years of their lives or spend their whole lives trying to earn their parents' approval, trying to earn their parents' love. If only I do this, then my father will like me. Then my father will approve me. And guess what? He's never going to love you. He's never going to approve you. You know why? You are not the kind of guy he would have met up with and made friends with at a bar. You just happen to be his biological offspring. He doesn't like you. For millions of us, we're just fundamentally incompatible with our parents, where our parents will forever be less than our friends. They will be more like an enemy than a friend our whole lives long. They will never love us. Maybe we can have a business relationship with them. Maybe they can be our colleagues. Maybe they can just barely tolerate us. Maybe not even that, right? You're never entitled to someone else's love, not even if they marry you, right? So we all know this scenario. I mean, oh, come on. If you're 17, you know what I'm talking about, right? You can take the vows, you can write it down on a piece of paper, but then what happens? Oh, now I see that you're a gambling addict. This isn't the man I fell in love with. This isn't who I thought you really were. Maybe he mentioned it once when you were dating and you ignored it. You thought it was, he mentioned, back when he was a teenager, he used to do a lot of gambling. You thought, okay, well, that's in the past. It's no big deal. And then you've been married for 5 years and you find out he has a gambling addiction. And when he said he was going away on the weekends on a business trip, that wasn't a business trip. He was going to Las Vegas. Or I guess you don't love him. I guess you found out who he really is. All right. And guess what, people? It's not always something as obvious as being a gambling addict or a drug addict, right? You could find out the smallest thing imaginable. You could find out some fatal flaw about this person, but it runs from the surface right down to the deepest crags of their soul. And then you find you don't love them. You despise them. You loved who they thought, you loved who you thought they were, or you loved who they pretended to be, who they presented themselves to be. And now you find out in some facet, in some flaw, who they really are. And guess what? It doesn't matter if you wrote a contract. It doesn't matter if you took a vow in the church, if you put your hand on a stack of Bibles. Doesn't matter what the ritual is. Doesn't matter if you got a gold ring. Doesn't matter if you have a literal rope and chain. You have a chain going to a ball and chain, It doesn't matter if you have a tattoo saying you will love Suzette forever. There is no way you can make a commitment to love. There is no way you can commit to love someone, and there's no way they could ever commit to you. That's not love. That's duty. Duty is real. Obligation is real. And men will fight and die for their duty. And men will remain dutiful husbands, especially in a culture that rewards that their whole life long. But they won't love that bitch. There are men who are dutiful to someone their whole life. There are women who are dutiful to their husband. They do their duty with just as much commitment as a soldier going into battle. They don't love him. You think this shit is rare? Okay. Love is precisely what you can never put in a contract. It's what you can never promise. Doesn't matter if you call it a promise ring. Doesn't matter if you call it a promise tattoo, right? Love is what can never be earned. Can never be deserved. It's what you can never be entitled to. Okay. Welcome, guys. If you have a minute, hit the thumbs up. Hit the thumbs up. This is a Thursday night. For some of you, it's very, very late at night. More people hit the thumbs up. More people could join this slightly surreal conversation. I was going to answer just two questions. One from email, one from a supporter on Patreon. Obviously, you could expand the range of questions right now. It is a Q&A video. If someone asks something interesting, I'm happy to digress and regress, shall we say. Oh, so someone's coming in from New Zealand. Alexa, what's the time in Auckland? Alexa, volume 10. I'll have to ask again. Alexa, what's the time in Auckland? Oh, great. Well, at least it made Melissa laugh. Okay, it's great. Thanks for joining us. For everyone in the New Zealand time zone. Shout out to everyone in New Zealand and Australia. It's a terrible time to Alexa, volume 10. Okay. Alexa, tell me a joke.
Did you hear about the Cobra's stand-up act? It killed.
Oh, if you don't have any friends, guys, you can buy yourself a robot. Oh, right. Sorry. So here I am drinking from a bottle. Oh, but this is September of 2020. Oh, who drinks from a bottle? Oh, look what yes. Plastic bottle. Solid steel mug with my own logo on it. There you go. The à-bas-le-ciel season 2 logo. All right. So look, I understand, I am not answering this question in the spirit in which it is intended. I've decided to address the more profound issue raised by it. But obviously the person asking this, they were asking a way to jar me or jilt me or insult me. They think about this the way, frankly, an incel thinks about it. So inceldom is a subculture. Incels look at relations between the sexes as something earned, something bartered, something you're entitled to. They look at relationships and love and marriage as something that a man is entitled to because of his job, because of his social status, because of some morally redeeming qualities or virtues. And then they complain that they are not getting the love or the relationship or the type of partner they feel they deserve on the basis of these criteria. So that's thinking in terms of entitlement, being entitled to love. Right? And what I'm saying here is to start off with a radical critique of that premise, going down to its most profound roots and say, no, this is a very fundamental misunderstanding of love. Whatever love is not respect. Love is not duty. Love is something that can never be earned. And I do not think in terms of being entitled to anyone's love ever. All right. Now, the purpose of this barbed question is to insinuate that I am someone so ugly that I should not feel entitled to the love of a beautiful woman. I should not feel entitled to the love of someone as beautiful as Melissa or frankly, the numerous other beautiful women who throw themselves at me, past, present, and future, because it's still going on. I do still get women interested in me to this day. A lot of them are objectively very good looking. So I think the part that would probably surprise you in the audience most is that the vast majority of the women who are interested in me, shall we say romantically, they've never watched my YouTube channel. They've never seen me on the internet. They just respond to me in real life, face to face, or they get in touch with me and start talking to me. That it's kind of surprising for me too. So yes, there are some women who see these videos and hear me talking about philosophy and politics, and that's why they want me. It's because of that intellectual side. But let's say in the last 20 years, I guess the big surprise for me is that there are more women after me just on the basis of like immediate direct impressions, you know? Okay. So this question or series of questions I've received about this. Think about how twisted the implications are. Like, are you actually alleging that ugly people are entitled to love and be loved by other ugly people? That beautiful people are entitled to love or be loved by other beautiful? Like, there's a whole series of implicitly assumed entitlements and exclusions that really fundamentally do not make sense. And the most fundamental misconception is this, and this is what's common to the right-wing incels, the right-wing MGTOW people, the right-wing the right-wing red pill people, right? And also a lot of radical feminists. So this is something feminists have in common, whether they're left-wing feminists or not, with right-wing incels, etc. And that is that you are thinking about love in terms of justice and injustice. You are presuming that for a beautiful woman to fall in love with an ugly man would be an injustice. And you're wrong. You are presuming that for a handsome man to fall in love with an ugly woman would be an injustice. And you're wrong. You're bringing a set of categories that fundamentally have to do with entitlement and that fundamentally have to do with resentment. You're bringing a set of irrelevant categories to the subject of love, and you are imposing it onto that subject, and you're forcing it to fit. And if it won't fit, you throw tantrums because then you feel that the world is an unjust place that doesn't make sense. And the problem isn't with the world. The problem is with you. The problem is with your categories, with your analysis. You're taking a world that makes perfectly good sense and you're turning it into nonsense. You're taking a world that in this respect is actually perfectly just because it's neither just nor unjust. And you're turning it into a caricature of the most evil injustice because you're taking a radically irrelevant set of moral criteria and forcing them to fit on that world. Oh, you thought this was going to be shallow. You thought what? You thought when I talk about penis size, it's not shallow, guys, okay? It's all deep around here. Okay, so really brief but meaningful comment from Wild Style. Wild Style says, quote, "Love is blind," close quote. No, it's not. No, it's not. I was telling an anecdote to Melissa this morning. Now, I could tell this anecdote from several different angles, from several different reasons. This was back when I was working at Starbucks. So I was a kid working at Starbucks. I was already tall. Women thought I was handsome. And this woman comes in, and you know what it is with people? People have a certain level of ESP for sexuality. Like you can tell, well, if you're experienced, you can tell if someone's gay, you can tell if someone has a crush on you, can tell there are two people, you can tell one of them has a crush on the other. But this tall, striking woman who's a little bit older than me comes into Starbucks, and everyone can tell right away that she has some history with me. and she gets all nervous and flustered, and she starts smoking cigarettes, like to deal with her nerves, like in a nervous way. And I'm just working at Starbucks. She has this interaction with me like across the counter. And it was funny because I hadn't really interacted with the other male guys at the Starbucks in this way before, but they had seen me flirting. Well, okay, they had seen female customers trying to flirt with me and trying to get at me. They had seen women trying to get at me, and I wasn't aware that they were jealous. I didn't feel like we were in a competition. But somebody else on the staff, I don't know if it was a girl or a guy, like they went and talked to her when they like brought her a drink to her or something. They asked her, like, oh, are you friends with this guy? Like, you guys know each other? And I forget if I forget if she said that I was her ex-boyfriend, but she said something to that effect, which wasn't true. There had been some connection between us. She said, so yeah. Like, I don't know if she said she had a history with me, or she said something like that. And you could just see the way she was chain smoking stuff. And all the guys, so as soon as she goes out the door, and somehow this is spread through telephone or whatever, all the guys on staff, there are all these guys here, they start hooting and hollering at me. Like, oh man, we know you got with all these good looking women, but god damn, man. Like, they start giving me all these like compliments that are really, jealous. And they start making all these lewd comments too. Like, these guys had a deep vocabulary about how hot this woman is, about how attractive this woman is. And to me, like, it's so alien. For one thing, the jealousy is alien. The competition is alien. Like, what do you think? And the other thing is, you could see in those moments why I'm not interested in this one. I've never been interested in this one. It's true. We had some kind of connection. She smokes cigarettes. Like, she's a chain smoker. You could also tell something about her ethical character and her nervousness or something. You say love is blind. No, it's not. But if you calibrate these things, like, do you want to be with someone who's, better looking, but who's a chain smoker? Like, would you rather be with someone who's less good looking, but has never smoked a cigarette in their life? This is the reality of the world we live in. How attractive someone is just one factor. It's not that love is blind. It's not. And, you could be with someone so hideously ugly that it's really a problem for you. And you could be with someone who you find so gorgeous and so attractive that you rationalize it and talk yourself into accepting them, even though they smoke cigarettes, or there's something else you really dislike. You think, well, this guy is gorgeous. Maybe I can make it work. Maybe I can help him quit smoking, right? No, the point isn't that love is blind. The point is that your appearance is just one factor, among many, which again, incels can't deal with. Now, likewise, I noticed this specific type of jealousy, what this questionnaire is on about. Like, why didn't you apply this to intelligence rather than appearance, right? Have I ever had one person write into me saying that Melissa is too smart to be with me? Serious question. Has anyone questioned this relationship in terms of intelligence? Like, do you think it doesn't matter? Like, what do you talk about when you wake up next to this person in the morning? You think that doesn't matter? Like, even the shallowest people I've ever known, it matters to all of them. It matters to all of them so much. Even if they have a fantasy that they can just fall in love with people or have romantic relations or have sex with people where appearance won't matter or something, right? You kind of like can't. Sorry, pardon me. They have a fantasy that intelligence will matter. They can just pursue someone because they're attractive or beautiful. Inevitably, you have to confess yourself, no, it really matters to me how intelligent this person is. Say, of course it matters. Of course it matters. So no, I would never say that love is blind, right? But of course, what I say again and again and again is that, appearances do not matter nearly as much as all these other considerations, tangible and intangible. So anyway, we have people in the audience saying she is smart, right? Most of you guys can judge for yourself. And so there are enough YouTube videos, and you can judge what kind of person she is intellectually, morally, and you can judge. By all means, come and judge. My point is, isn't it funny that someone going after me this way, someone says, why would you try to suggest that my girlfriend is too beautiful to be with me, that I don't deserve her, that I'm not entitled to her, right? why wouldn't it be some other characteristic? Like, why wouldn't it be an intellectual characteristic, an ethical characteristic, an emotional characteristic, right? You aren't saying she's too kind. You know, Melissa really laughed at that. You're not saying she's too kind, but I'm not entitled to her because she's too kind. You're not saying she's too smart. You're not saying she's too hardworking. You know, I'm sorry, there are a lot of redeeming qualities, someone could have, right? So yeah, this is obviously a case where the question, tells us a great deal about the questioner. And obviously, for me, the most profound and also the most pragmatic part of this discussion is try to get past the concept of entitlement. So, babe, I'm sort of still your butt in water. Yeah, sorry. So, a lot of love for Melissa in here. Brendan Williams says Melissa is on the level he's looking for in women. Yeah. No, any lesbians or bisexual women trying to steal Melissa from me? I don't think that's happened yet. That I know of. we've had guys. I mean, who can blame them? Right. So Brendan Williams also says he's sharing my critique of both the feminists and the incels and MGTOW people. He says, quote, purely transactional mindset. That's right. And I think that that's what's terrifying to them. I think exactly what they're trying to do is, on the one hand, take human sexuality and abase it to the level of being nothing but a transaction. And then at the same time, they're trying to kind of glorify it and moralize about it. These are two completely contradictory self-defeating impulses, obviously, so that they can grandstand and talk about entitlements and talk about justice and injustice and talk about the way that the world ought to be, as opposed to talking about the way that the world is. Okay. And the way that the world is this. All right. People discover that they have the capability to love someone else. All right. And they may discover it in a completely unexpected way. They discover that they can love someone, and then they have to think about whether or not they should. Okay. And it's not something you can ever earn. It's not something you can ever deserve. It's not something you can ever be entitled to. And conversely, it's never something you can be disentitled to. It's never something you can lack, the credentials for. It's never something that someone else can tell you you don't deserve. Now, this guy thinks he's a left-wing, politically correct feminist, the guy who's criticizing me. Oh, yeah? So you think I'm ugly, huh? I get a lot of female attention. Still to this day, still at 42 years old, still busy writing my book. Okay, I get a lot of female attention when I'm alone. The vast majority of the time, I'm holding Melissa's hand. I get attention, and I get attention when I'm with Melissa. Back when I was married to my ex-wife, women came at me when I was holding her hand and introducing her to people. I remember me and my ex-wife used to laugh about this. I would say, these women are coming at me, and I'm not telling them you're my sister. I'm not telling them you're just a friend. I'm like, oh yeah, have you met my wife? It's the first thing I'm saying to everyone. It's just like, I didn't, it's like, oh yeah, this is some girl. Yeah, I don't know. No, like, women are still good. So, regardless of whether or not you subjectively find me ugly, I've got to tell you, that's not my struggle life. But if you want to talk this way in terms of entitlement and then lacking entitlement, and then you want to talk about justice and injustice, what would you say to me if I were in a wheelchair? Would you really have the nerve to say to a man in a wheelchair that he doesn't deserve the love of a woman who's walking around on two legs? How dare you? All right. Isn't it funny how now it becomes obvious which side injustice is on here? Right? Now, if you talk to any woman who is married to a man in a wheelchair, she's a close friend of yours, and she's honest, of course she's going to admit there are inconveniences. I mean, of course. I've known couples, there are people who have a special house made for someone with a wheelchair where like the level of the windows is different and the toilet is different. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, and still it's going to piss you off. There are times when you're going to get out of bed and say to your husband, "Oh, look, could you go grab that thing for me? I'm in a rush. I got to do this." And he says to you, "Well, look, I can't because it's like just getting out of bed is way harder. Like getting out of bed and getting dressed. Like if you don't help him, for him to get out of bed and get dressed and help you, it's going to take him way more time than a man who has two working." And you think, "Oh, right." You can kind of forget the person you're with is disabled. Right? I knew a couple in Thailand where so I've probably mentioned this before. The woman was profoundly disabled in a wheelchair. I mean, she wasn't. It wasn't like she could walk with crutches. She was completely disabled from the waist down. And she had to phone her husband for help every single time she went to the bathroom. I say phone, it tells you something about the culture. Her husband was a smoker. I think he was a chain smoker, but he smoked cigarettes a lot. So if they were at home, if she was like washing the dishes in the sink or something, she would phone her husband, and her husband would be outside smoking. And her husband would come in and lift her off the wheelchair and physically put her on the toilet every single time she went to the bathroom. Okay? So look, it's not a minor inconvenience. The decision is going to change the rest of your life forever. All right? There are women who fall in love with blind men. There are women who fall in love with a man in a wheelchair. And who the hell are you to question who deserves who? Who are you to question how someone would be entitled to another person's love? Do you see how sick and twisted this is now? For you to come at me, for you to come at anyone and say, that man is too ugly to deserve or to be entitled to that woman, or vice versa. That woman is too ugly to deserve or be entitled to that man. None of us deserve love. None of us are entitled to love. Love is precisely what you give other people, what you do for other people, what you feel for other people, and what you are for other people, above and beyond what they deserve, above and beyond what they're entitled to. What they're entitled to is respect and duty, not love. Never love.
Are you done?
Yeah, you want to chime in? No, I'm still live streaming. But if you want to say it, yeah. Stand up, come a little close to the mic. I know. You say no. I'm gonna read some questions from the audience here.
Well, maybe unrelated at this exact moment.
Go on.
But I was just thinking of hiding in my room and how he said,
Yeah,
men were really interested in him when he was married, and then obviously a series of events happened that made him undesirable, as he tells it. But I just thought that was interesting to hear you say that with your ex and with me too.
Yeah.
Women have been interested in you while you're with me, yeah, it's I don't know if it's like something that is like desirable to see, that you're somebody that's in a happy relationship. Like it shows that you're desirable, right? So
Look, it's never going to make sense, guys. Like it's okay. This is the other thing I want to talk about. All right. In human experience, there are things that are rational. There are things that are irrational, but there are also things that are pre-rational. So come back to this moment. You probably didn't notice this. We went into a salad shop last night. Okay. Now, I was exhausted. It's not worth it, but like my face did not look good. I was really tired. It is ultimately actually because of working out at the gym. I had a really big work. I did 220 push-ups, did a lot of work at the gym, and then you don't really sleep that well. Then for various reasons, I was exhausted. And I didn't nap that day. So I also didn't have any caffeine. Anyway, I'm at this salad shop and I'm haggard. And I'm wearing the mask. So how much of my fucking face can you see? Okay. And I'm with Melissa. Right? And Melissa's paying attention to me. I know you weren't. And I wasn't going to point it out. Oh, hey, look, that chick's trying to get with me. That chick's trying to steal a friend. And there was a girl. This is old school to me. This is old school for a way to show somebody you're interested in. There was this girl. And she was looking at me. She was doing it directly, but she had a friend, and then she brought the friend over. And she like talks to she's talking to the friend and being like, "Look at that guy." I'm 42, guys. Yeah. Okay. So come back. I mean, what you're saying is that, no, like, I was not in the mood. I was pissed off at the guy. I was like, look, what's really vegan on this menu? And none of it's really vegan. I said, fuck, we're leaving, But anyway, just saying. All right. Okay. So look, guys, I understand the yearning to want the whole world to be rational, but that's fundamentally childish. It's childish and evil. It leads to evil. It's evil in itself, and it leads to evil. Okay, you want the whole world to be rational, and you get older and you get more sophisticated, and you learn to appreciate things that are irrational in this world. All right, and there's this third category of the pre-rational. Things that are pre-rational are things that you apprehend and respond to so rapidly that reason later catches up with them. Okay? So the classic example from Buddhist philosophy is that you walk into a dark warehouse and you see a coiled rope, and on a deep instinctual level, you react to it as if it were a poisonous snake. Now, I have lived in parts of the world that have poisonous snakes, and where it is quite likely, if you walk into a dark room, a cellar, a warehouse, that there will be snakes there. Like, it's not a ridiculous thing. And I've lived in parts of the world where they still use rope to tie things up. Like these days, it's mostly masking tape. Or like I think if you go to an Amazon warehouse, nothing has rope anymore. You know what I mean? So you got to live in a culture where this makes sense. But bro, if you ever experience this, you'll be in a situation where you are seeing it with your eyes and your rational mind is like catching up. And there's a level on which you see the rope, but for a split second, you feel like it's a snake. But pre-rational, that reflects millions of years of evolution. Right? Now, conversely, I remember riding a bicycle by the side of a mountain in northern Laos. So this is a highway in Laos, which means it's a narrow, like one lane paved road. Okay. And third world countries, the meaning of highway is different. So there's a narrow single lane, and there's one truck goes by every 15 minutes. Right. This is remote, poverty stricken Laos. And I stopped to look up close at this snake. And this is a very interesting evolved behavior. It was hanging like a fish hook. It was hanging like an upside down question mark right by the side of the road in the clear. Yeah. It's interesting. So I don't have something good to demonstrate with. If you imagine an old fashioned umbrella and you hold it upside down so that and this snake was so beautiful. It was such a piercing shade of green. And I think this is true. A lot of snakes, and this snake in particular, they live very short lifespans. So they've sort of come straight out of the egg. They have this very vibrant, quality to them that, I don't know, a lot of long-lived mammals don't have. They live for a short time, and the colors are very bright while they live and so on. And I was completely fearless. I was in no way, I didn't feel afraid at all. And I just really got up, like I got up within millimeters. I was really examining and appreciating this snake, for its beauty, and also wondering about the evolved behavior here. Why would it hang like that? Okay. I later found out this is the deadliest snake in Laos. And the reason it's hanging like that is that it's one of the only snakes that when it gets hungry will hang like that so it can try to poison like a passing deer, like a large mammal, to kill it. Like the vast majority of snakes won't do that. Like they eat tiny mice or something. Like it's actually out of desperation. This is what I was told. Like, oh no. That's like one of the only snakes they'll actually kill you. Whether or not it's deadly, they'll poison you, and the poison will be like unbelievably painful and terrible. So, this is my point. I'm looking at this thing rationally, right? But reason is neither wrong nor right. It's just reason. It's reasoning. You can reason yourself into a terrible marriage, all right? And you know what I mean? You can reason your way into a marriage, and you can reason your way out of a marriage. You can reason your way in, you can reason your way into a divorce, right? You can reason your way into an early grave. You can have a completely rational response to a real snake that is false and will get you killed. And you can have an irrational, pre-rational, automatic response to a coiled rope that's completely harmless, right? Is it correct or incorrect? Okay. So, guys, I am seeing the comments as they come in. Pardon me. Quote, your video on Lao Shu made me think not just about the ambitions of various polyglots on YouTube, but even my own. I appreciate your candor. Thank you. I hope you're still here. Sometimes people leave these comments and then disappear. I was just giving advice to another YouTuber 1 hour ago, a very short time ago. I don't know if she'll take it. I mean, I don't know if she'll be happy to hear it or not. But I was talking to a YouTuber and saying, look, so there's a digression from the top of this video, but in response to this question, I think it's meaningful enough to say, saying, look, you have to think about YouTube as filmmaking. You have to think about filmmaking as work. And then you have to think about what you're doing in your own real life as something quite separate. If you take it any other way down that path, madness lies. And, so I used an example, which at first may seem like it doesn't mean much to you guys, but if you think about it in my life and your life, you'll start to realize how deep it is. I said, look, it has been difficult for me, and I am still struggling with the difference between reading a book in order to review it on YouTube, in order to talk about it on YouTube, in order to make a video about it on YouTube, and making a YouTube video about whatever book I happen to be reading. So I have the dust jacket out of this one, but I might as well shout out Andy No here. Sorry. Here's the book, and the dust jacket is coming off. Yeah, so this is Unmasked by Andy No. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this issue. There it is. There it is without the dust jacket on. Yeah, nice. Yeah. Okay, so maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal to you. Well, okay, what if you are a restaurant review channel? What if you're a food review channel? Okay, did you really want to eat in that restaurant? Or did you just go to eat in that restaurant so that you can make a YouTube video about it? Okay, is this actually the cuisine you want to cook? Is this the recipe book you want to write? Or did you research this and make this recipe? Okay. How about political activism? Did you really make that trip to Washington, D.C. because you want to be there? You want to do, or is it because you have a YouTube channel and you know you can make a video? So it has this tremendous corrupting influence on your life. Now, your question is about Lao Shu and language learning. And with an example like that, it's the deepest of all. Like, are you learning Chinese, or are you a filmmaker, or are you pulling off a bunch of stunts related to language learning just so you can make YouTube videos about them? What is the horse and what is the carriage here? Right. So those are tough questions. And by the way, I'm not here saying there's like one answer to all of them, but yes, the whole polyglot phenomenon on YouTube, the whole language education as entertainment phenomenon, and language education for profit, and language education to launch your career as a sex symbol on social media. Like there's a lot of that, the sexy female language teacher on social media phenomenon. There's a lot of that going on to some extent. In the past, I remember with men. I remember with handsome white men living in Japan teaching you how to learn Japanese. So it has happened with male sex symbols also. Yeah, but I think the most fundamental questions of all have to do with recognizing, YouTube is filmmaking. Filmmaking is work. Work is not life, or it's not the whole of your life. And then really thinking about the relationship between those things. Because the number of hours you put into learning a language compared to the number of hours you'd spend going to eat at a restaurant just to make a video about it, woo, this is tough. This is tough to deal with. Hi, Chris. Thanks for joining the crowd. If you have a minute, Chris, hit the thumbs up button, and more people can join us in this this horrifying conversation. Okay, so look, guys, coming back to question number one here, nobody is entitled to anyone's love. And as soon as we're talking about entitlement and love in the same sentence, frankly, I think we've profoundly misapprehended what love is, and even on a mechanistic level, how love works. In the same sense that you can be terrified, at least for a moment, of a snake that you know for a fact is not poisonous in any way. If you're surprised to discover a snake in your own basement or in your own living room, and even though you rationally know, like you may live in a part of Canada where there are no poisonous snakes, or it may just be like even if you live in Australia where some snakes are poisonous, you recognize the species, you recognize the pattern, this particular snake is of no harm to anyone. You can still react to it in a pre-rational way with terror, and a very profound terror that is shaped and created by evolution, right? And on the other hand, you may have no reaction at all when seeing a real snake, as in my anecdote. And again, you can have the same reaction also to a piece of rope. It could be a piece of rope, but it's dark and you're distracted. You just know, ooh, by the way, piece of rope sometimes hang down also. Ooh, you're alert and you react to it as if it were a snake. Okay. A lot of what's going on, especially with our face-to-face interactions with sexuality, is neither rational nor irrational, but pre-rational. Okay. And okay, look. Okay. And you can never know what aspects of your sexual experience are rational, irrational, or pre-rational. You can't know it. Not even in reflecting afterwards. So I'm going to give you guys a great example. Okay. There is a vegan restaurant here. This is about 1 year ago now, maybe a year and a half ago, but it's not that long ago. There's a vegan restaurant here where you've got to line up like it's the prison cafeteria. And I don't like this place. And I went in to buy pre-packed seitan or tofu, one of those. So I was just buying something to cook at home. So I go in, and there is this woman. I would guess she's about 30. She's not, like a lot of women here, she's wearing completely skin tight, revealing attire. And I can tell from the minute I walk in, she is really attracted to me. And during this first encounter, I never look at her directly. Like I'm looking at the tofu. I kind of see her out of the side of my eye. Like you get in line, you move around to the other side of her in line. It's one of those things you move around each other. And by the way, she's really looking at me. Like she's wanting me to look back at her. You know what I mean? She's looking straight at me, and I'm not looking at her. And I'm looking at the money, and I'm doing things. And I've got to tell you, so like that on that encounter, like yeah, there's a sense in which it's like looking at a rope and seeing a snake. Like I didn't really have a clear sense of even what she looked like. I've got to tell you, I could feel how attracted she was to me, and I felt attracted to her. Okay. Now, all right. So there's a sequel. I met her again. So spoilers. Okay. I know she's in a vegan restaurant. To what extent this attraction I felt towards someone? Someone's calling. All right. This attraction I felt towards someone I couldn't even really see clearly. Right. You could say, well, that's totally irrational. That's totally instinctual. Some people would even try to argue, oh, maybe it was your sense of smell. Like something like it's not even seeing them, or it's their aura or something. It's their magnetism. People will try to come up with, these are rationalizations, right? Okay, but what I was feeling, how much of that is, this is a vegan restaurant, this is a vegan woman, and there are other things you can tell about her. Like in terms of her social class, like there were a lot of cues about who someone is. Obviously, her level of physical fitness, just in the fact that she's wearing this skin tight, revealing attire. You know what I mean? So I saw that woman again. I don't even know it was a month later, but maybe 3 weeks later or something. I went back. Same thing. I went back to buy some basic supplies there. So I wasn't going for a meal. I wasn't going for fun. And naturally, I probably should. People live in patterns. She was probably there for the same reason. But probably was the same time of day too, for all I know. I don't remember like that. And I go in, and it's just the angle. Like I come in a different the angle I see her at is different. And she has disgusting tattoos. She has tattoos, which I didn't see last time. She has tattoos that make me think she's a scumbag and she's an idiot and she's like part of the drug culture, and her style of hair, which I didn't see at all first time. A lot of things about her appearance, seeing her now more clearly, right away make me think This is someone who uses marijuana. This is someone who uses ecstasy. This is someone who uses LSD. This is someone who's part of a whole hippie yoga mat, hard drug culture. And I'm sorry, I'm not judging all tattoos. I'm judging the specific tattoos this woman has and what they tell you about her character and her culture, right? This is not, you can have a tattoo that's just a circle. You know, you can have it can be anything. You can have a tattoo that says, I read Aristotle. Okay, those were not the tattoos she had, right? You can have a tattoo that says a lot about you. But the tattoos this woman had and where they are on her body, right away, whoa. And of course, I recognize her. I know, I'm 100% certain it's the same woman before. And right away, I think, wow, I can't believe I found this woman attractive. Like, I can't believe I felt, and again, I didn't really see her. And on the other hand, being all the way there, I was like, oh, well, I can see why she was after me. I feel too good for her. I'm just being real with you. This is, I wouldn't take this woman out to lunch, and I'm not interested in her at all, until right away. It's like, oh, you're not, again, I don't. Okay. But with either one of those experiences, you can force an interpretation onto it that's 100% rational, right? Like a super rational reading is, okay, you went to a vegan restaurant. You assume this person was vegan. Maybe you assume they even recognize you from your YouTube channel and you have a lot in common. You have assumptions about them politically, ethically. You have all these positive assumptions just because you're eating a vegan restaurant. There's a rational explanation for why you felt something positive for this person, right? Or just, hey, you want to assume the best about them. You don't know anything about them. You're not really looking at them, And there's also this totally pre-rational reading, like, no, like these are evolved animal instincts. You're reacting to something with the person. And then the second meeting, where I basically reject her or feel like this is someone I would never even want to talk to. Pardon me. You can look at that also and insist on a completely rational interpretation. Like, oh, well, you saw her tattoos, you analyzed it. This is how I've got to tell you, that's not how I experienced it. I feel like that was my rational mind catching up afterwards. I feel like seeing her the second time, my reaction was just as immediate and instinctual. I just was not attracted to her at all. That was how I felt it immediately. And then afterwards, it takes a few seconds. You'd be like, oh, and look at those tattoos. Oh, and think about, oh, okay, I guess she's that kind of person. That stuff, it takes a few seconds for your mind to catch up with that, Okay, look, so guys, all kinds of great comments and questions here. So Pitter Patter says, confidence is a huge factor for both men and women. Quote, I think that's why Eisel is so highly sought after, LOL. Okay. How can they even tell I'm confident? Like in these situations, like a lot of my encounters with women, a lot of my interaction, how can they even tell? I just say in a lot of these things, I think instead we're dealing with this. And like I can't sit here and say you're wrong. You know what I mean? But I think what you're trying to do, it's totally understandable, is that you're trying to take something that's fundamentally irrational and primarily this kind of pre-rational thing, and you're trying to foist rational thinking onto it. You're trying to force it to fit into a rational mode of analysis. Okay, guys. So for me, on that issue, that's a wrap. I'm happy to sit here for a minute, Melissa. If you want to throw something in, but I made my point. I had the profoundest part of the argument first. For me, the deep end of the swimming pool has to do with overcoming any kind of thinking that's involved with entitlement. Again, guys, feel free to ask questions now. Ask questions now or forever hold your peace. And then in terms of looking at the world, what I think is a false and misleading way in terms of justice and injustice, what you have to understand is that we are relating to one another, neither rationally nor irrationally, but pre-rationally. So even if you talk to a woman who is committed to be married to a man in a wheelchair, all right? And I've already talked this through with you. There are a lot of disadvantages. There are a lot of inconveniences to being with a man in a wheelchair. There are a lot of inconveniences if you're married to someone who's blind, okay? Like if you ask them, well, wouldn't it be easier for you to be with someone? Yeah, that'd be easier. But this isn't about easy. This is about love, okay? This isn't about doing what's easy. This isn't about doing what's convenient, right? And he said to them, well, what if you could have exactly the same guy, you're in love with him, but he's not confined to the will? Of course they'd choose that. Of course, it's preferable. And I'm sure the guy would prefer it too. He'd prefer not to be confined to a wheelchair. He'd prefer to be able to stand up and use the toilet with a lot less difficulty. Sure, of course. Even if there's nothing else to do that, of course. Right? But we're not making we're not making these decisions in a rational way. It's not a question of what's best. It's not a question of what's optimal. It's not a question of being with the most attractive person you can be with or the most wealthy person you can be with. It's not a question of choosing the person who is most deserving or most entitled, right? This is the person you can love. You have to decide, is this or not the person I should love, And then, consequences follow from there. And, sometimes the consequences can be tremendously serious because you've fallen in love with someone who's addicted to gambling or addicted to alcohol or addicted to video games, or who may disappoint you in 10,000 other ways, ethically or intellectually besides. The people you have fallen in love with, people you've decided to trust, can disappoint you in so many ways that the inconvenience of helping someone who is in a wheelchair or is blind or some other physical disability, those inconveniences seem incredibly trivial when you compare them to the kind of betrayal you would have to endure if you fall in love with a man who is addicted to gambling or addicted to drugs, or who betrays you or cheats on you or stabs you in the back in 10,000 different ways. So no, but we really experience attraction between people in a way that is not rational. And then the rational mind races to catch up with it afterwards. So, if in any of these scenarios, women I've actually had whole relationships with, or women where I had very brief encounters, if you were to ask why is this woman attracted to you? And this person asks the questions, of course, asking a much more loaded, poisonous, which they say, why do you feel entitled to this person being attracted to you or being loved? You're asking the wrong question. There is no why. Any answer you can offer to that question, why, is going to be a rationalization, catching up afterwards. And you, the person asking this question, you are rationalizing things in terms of entitlement in a way that I think is fundamentally misleading, bad, and evil and wrong. So a little bit more commentary. Pitter Patter says, quote, I can't think that's the only contributing factor, but you also mentioned about speaking out in university classes and having women come up and talk to you afterwards, right? Right, intelligence. I've had so many videos talking about intelligence and human sexuality that I just haven't been talking about that at such length here, but of course. And another question, Hapless Jack says, quote, you're tall, clearly strong. It makes sense. Ladies like you. You speak clearly and concisely. No nonsense, no shit. I think it's your overall vibe, Isel. Right? Okay. But to what extent is that rational and to what extent is that pre-rational? When women meet me, they don't know that I'm sober. I don't think of, maybe the last time I drank alcohol was 21, but really I quit drinking at my drinking days were 16, 17. Really, drinking was already over for me at 19. I can't say I drank zero alcohol when I was 19 years old, right? But I've basically been sober for my whole adult life, right? But they meet me, they have these kinds of impressions you're talking about, right? Oh, this is how the guy speaks in class, this is how the guy speaks to me, or whatever. They meet me and there's something they respond to, right? And I have that characteristic because I'm sober all the time. Even, my overall intellect, guys, I have all these brothers. None of my brothers can come on camera talking to this right now. If I'd spent 20 years getting drunk 3 nights a week, do you think I'd be on this level? You know what I mean? Okay. So yeah, I have all these characteristics, but they're responding to that in a split second. You know what I mean? And maybe they make up explanations in their own mind afterwards for why they like me. Right. But I don't, even the factors you're listing off here, these are rationalizations that come afterward. And when they meet me, they don't know I'm confident. They don't know I'm well-spoken. They don't know I'm sober. They don't know I'm trustworthy. They may learn those things in time. There are all kinds of redeeming qualities I have that agree from a rational perspective. You can say attracts women or makes women more interested in me once they're attracted to me, blah, 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 blah. But no, in that moment with those encounters, when you meet people, the truth is they don't know why. And I don't know why either. And I'll never know why. And any explanation I can offer will be susceptible to this same kind of withering analysis. We say, yeah, but to what extent are you foisting a rationalization onto something that is fundamentally pre-rational? And for that reason, it can never be judged as just or unjust. All right. I remember I made a blog post about this. There was a woman. To me, she was very good looking, a very good looking, very short woman who became a lawyer. Someone can Google this and figure out the case I commented on. It's a very good looking, very short woman, high level of educational attainment and career. And I saw one YouTube video in which she seemed smart. She seemed very intelligent. She seemed brilliant, even, let's say, in the YouTube video, right? And she got sexually involved with Lamar Odom, this moron drug addict basketball player. And that was in the period of Lamar Odom's life when I think he'd been kicked off of his basketball team. He'd been married to a member of the Kim Kardashian family, and then his marriage broke up. And he was really a drug addict. He was really, in the most pathetic sense, right? Anyone look at it and say, what do you like about this guy? What's wrong with you? Anybody can say, quote unquote, he doesn't deserve you. Right? Okay. All of us can imagine. Come on. So maybe if you're 16, you can't imagine. I can imagine exactly what she found attractive. And in this interview, she was being cross-examined. And it was like, have you seen him using cocaine? No, it wasn't even cocaine. Smoking crack cocaine inside your own house. Have you seen this yourself? And the answer was basically yes. Because she was a trained lawyer, she was using this very peculiar wording, so she couldn't be held legally accountable. Which was also interesting here and showed that she was really sharp. She knew how to answer a question like that without getting herself hooked for a crime or something. You know what I mean? So yeah, someone in the audience mentioned he overdosed several times, to my knowledge. But anyway, he had a really serious drug problem. But yeah, there was one in particular that got into the newspapers. But no, he was a serious drug addict. So why would this woman fall in love with this guy? He was living in her home, in her apartment or condo or whatever she had. Why would she continue to tolerate him when she knows he's a drug addict? She sees him using hard drugs in her own home. It could ruin her legal career. It could ruin her whole life. And you love that man. And he's ugly. It's Lamar Odom. Come on. He's got a face that could stop a clock. Fuck, man. He's hideous. He's a moron. Watching any interview with them. What do you think they talk about in the morning? Think they roll out of bed and let's talk about politics and the upcoming California primary? Let's talk. No, you know what I mean? The guy's the worst stereotype of a dumb jock. I wasn't born yesterday, kids. I can imagine what she sees, and I can imagine even what she loves about him. And I can imagine that relationship brought a lot of things into her life that would be totally absent if she were with a cerebral man whom she met in law school. The kind of guys wearing a suit and tie who went through law school and did paperwork all day with all the poetry in their soul of a career bureaucrat. You know what I mean? This kind of guy. And then, here's this, I forget what he is, 7 foot tall basketball player. He's incredibly tall. He's ugly, but he's cute. Okay, come on, guys. I wasn't born yesterday. I can imagine there were a lot of things that made that. But so again, you notice the difference. Earlier on, an hour ago, there was this comment from Wildstyle. Wildstyle said, love is blind. I'm not saying love is blind. I'm saying that love is pre-rational, and then the rational mind catches up with it and rationalizes it. And thus, it's not susceptible to analysis in terms of justice and injustice. You can't say it's an injustice for this woman to fall in love with this man, this lawyer to fall in love with a drug-addicted basketball player. And it's profoundly misleading and wrong to talk about it in terms of entitlement.
Related to the title.
Hit it up. Just speak loud so they can hear you. Good.
Yeah. In the title, you included socialism.
Right. That's the next question. Yeah, go on. You want to say something?
No, I was just curious if you've already, in a way, addressed the socialism of, that we're all entitled to certain things. We're entitled to healthcare. We're entitled to education.
Can you grab the book on ancient Greek comedy? It might be on your desk. Yeah. So Melissa is asking about the overlap between the two topics we're talking about here today, guys. So Aristophanes has a comedy dealing with a utopian or dystopian scenario in which people quite literally socialize the D. So Melissa and I, we are fans of a YouTube channel. We utterly despise and hate this YouTube channel, Kristen Leo, and she uses this catchphrase, socialize the D. Okay. If you don't know what D stands for, I can't help you. So there is a comedy in here about a utopian plan whereby the women of Athens take over the Pnyx one day. So this part of the plot is worth including in the summary. A bunch of women disguise themselves as men and go into their system of direct democracy. It's not a parliament, it's the Pnyx, but it's their system of voting. And they put forward this proposal to communalize access to sex, to socialize the D. Now, I'm going to forget the numbers offhand, but the most fundamental question is, well, if you do this, if you basically force, beautiful people to have sex with ugly people, well, this is going to result in a huge number of ugly people trying to have sex with all these beautiful people, and the beautiful people are going to run away or resent it. Like, it's not going to work. Beautiful people are going to flee from a city where they're coerced into having sex with enormous numbers of ugly people, just because this is your socialist utopian fantasy for how life ought to be. Will be more just or what have you. Yeah, try adding a little bit more light in here, guys. Actually, babe, when you have a sec, why don't you turn on that light back there? Sure. Thanks. Great. Thanks, babe. That's better. Anyway, so they come up with a mathematical formula, and it's something like, for every one young, beautiful person you have sex with, you have to have sex with 7 old or fat or ugly people. Like, there's a ratio you're committed to socialize the D, right? So it's not quite equality. And it ends with, it's a comedy, but it ends with a horrendous scene of gangs of old, ugly women going around and demanding sex with these young, beautiful men. That it's the men that are being chased down and forced to have sex with old, fat, and ugly women that they don't want to make love to. And the young men are saying, no, I just want to sleep with this beautiful young woman who's, my girlfriend or something. The old women are dragging away the handsome young men to have sex with them. So that was a utopian comedy, or showing that utopia is really dystopia, about, in this sense, socializing the D, the communalization of. Was that the door? No, it was just someone next to me. All right, somebody going past. All right, sorry. It's been a long time since I had someone actually enter stage left. Do you remember that happened when I was in Kunming a couple times? I had people come in the door when I was last year. Do you remember that? Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, we have a question here about Brave New World. Yeah. I think it's a terrible book. I think Brave New World is garbage, but yeah, it's a very influential science fiction book, offering a very different view of how sexuality could be liberated in the future. We have a complaint here that I assume is directed towards Melissa, that your video about Hitomi was rude. Dear sir, how dare you? How dare you suggest that our well-intentioned and profound critique of Miss Hitomi Mochizuki was in any way rude or improper? I say. Okay, so there's a great question from the audience. Before we move on to the second, even more profound question, and why this is titled Sex and Socialism. Sorry, briefly, that digression was about the extent to which sex and socialism are one and the same question, because there have been utopian ideals about socializing the D, including some very stupid left-wing YouTube channels today who talk about this ideal. We have a very profound question. Quote, Eisel, do you consider yourself more attractive than Vegan Gain's wife, Jasmine? So guys, I could repeat here exactly the same thing I've said again and again and again, all right? We can talk about subjective beauty, and we can talk about objective beauty. Okay? Subjective beauty is many things to many people. You can love someone because they're kind to you. You can love someone because they're interesting. You can love someone because they've brought so many positive, wonderful things in your life, even though they're ugly and they may not look ugly to you. Like they may be beautiful in your eyes. And I used the example before of a painting. A particular painting may have value to you. A particular photograph may have value to you, even though to other people it's ugly. There's a subjective and personal sense in which one person is beautiful despite all these things. And again, people do fall in love with hideously deformed people. It happens all the time. It's the reality. So one thing is the subjective standard of beauty. But then we can talk about what is, in most real-world situations, the objective standard of beauty, which is in fact an intersubjective standard of beauty. Okay, so look, guys, I've given you a lot of anecdotes. I know a lot of you have joined more recently. You may not have been here since the start of the live stream. By the way, feel free to share this link to anyone on Reddit or Facebook who would be completely scandalized and horrified by this in-depth discussion of human sexuality. Share it with Reddit/r/breadtube. They'd especially appreciate what I'm calling this video. Okay. And look, guys, my best girl, Melissa, if she got a job at Starbucks, there would be other guys at Starbucks trying to get at her, and they would be competing over her. Now, guys, also, life is in some ways unfair for women. So Melissa today is 28 years old. 10 years from now, that might not be the case. Like, I don't know what she'll at 38, maybe not. At 48, maybe not. At 58, stuff. But for Melissa at 20 years old, there's absolutely no doubt if Melissa starts working at Starbucks. And again, let's just say nobody knows. Like, let's just say she has no YouTube channel and no Instagram. Nobody knows anything about her. There will be male coworkers trying to get at her and competing over her, and there will be male customers trying to get at her and compete. So subjective and intersubjective. So again, there's a painting that I really like and I really value it, but I go to an art auction, or let's say an art show. It's better if it's not an auction. We go to an art show in Paris where paintings are put up and nobody else wants to buy it and nobody else is impressed that nobody else thinks it's beautiful. Okay. This happens. So you're not going to say objectively the painting is worthless. You say, well, look, you like this painting. Nobody else is interested. Okay. Now, guys, I've got to tell you something. Vegan Gains may sincerely love Jasmine. It may be that subjectively to him, she's the most beautiful woman in the world. If Jasmine goes to work at a Starbucks, it is not going to be for her what it would be for Melissa. All right. It's just not. They're not going to be on the same level in terms of that intersubjective standard of beauty. Not in this culture, not in Canada. And we're all in Canada, not here and not now. Okay. No. Now, there are a lot of reasons for that. Partly it's her appearance. Partly it's her attitude. Partly it's her speaking voice. Partly it's what we call charisma. She is a dumpy, self-loathing video game addict. She has a horrible attitude. Horrible. Oh, William, I must have said my age wrong. Sorry. William says happy birthday. Sorry, William. I didn't just get a year older. If I said I'll delete the comment because it's an error. Thanks, but it's not my birthday. If I screwed up, I'm sorry. So once in a while I do make errors here, guys. Anyway. Thanks anyway, James. Thanks anyway, William. Thanks anyway, William. Anyway, okay. We were just talking about these other factors too. We're talking about the role of what could be simply summarized as charisma. Right? When I'm talking about why are all these women after me? Okay, if you want one word, charisma. Now, Melissa actually does have some charisma, and you can see it in these YouTube videos. And no. I mean, okay, we're comparing you to Jasmine. Jasmine has negative charisma, right? She's a self-identified misanthrope. She's masculine where she ought to be feminine. She has she has a dark cloud over her head all the time, right? So no, I do think if you're making that comparison, of course, Melissa's on a whole different level. And of course, appearance is part of it. But also these other factors, matter. So, if you're asking me that question, sure, I've got an answer. And there's a subjective answer, and there's, in this intersubjective sense, there's an objective answer. So, guys, why do we have to be uptight about it? Why do we have to pretend this is a problem for anyone? Why can't we just be real about it? And God, here on YouTube, I mean, you see it all the time. I mean, sorry, someone was complaining about our critique of Hitomi Mochizuki. Does anyone doubt that her YouTube career is based on her appearance? Does anyone doubt it's based on her intersubjective level of attractiveness? It is what it is. And Again, people are uncomfortable with it for the same reason. Pardon me. I'm slurring my words now. People are uncomfortable with it for the same reason that we discussed before, that they try to foist concepts of justice and injustice onto human attraction and love. They feel that it is unjust for people to be unequally attractive. And in fact, it is neither just nor unjust. Anything you want to say, babe? You had another thing about it? Anything you want to say jumping in on this? Socialize the D.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of entitlement that comes through in some of these comments.
Yes.
That they feel entitled to love from somebody else. Like, I think that's part of it. And this sense of justice or injustice in love is, yeah, it's hard to be mature about that when you're not.
Yep.
You're not able to think it through. But once you do,
well, look, sorry, this may seem off topic, but it's on topic. So one of my grandmothers was Jewish. I'm half Jewish. And she joined a golf club. Never played golf. Why? Because she grew up with anti-Semitism. And up to a certain point in her life, all the golf clubs in Canada excluded Jews. They were whites-only golf clubs. They openly said that. They didn't allow Jewish members. And then it was a big accomplishment for her. She was proud she was going to go out and join this golf club and pay all this money. You're probably, if you read between the lines, I think this is completely pointless and ridiculous. This is my opinion. But that was her experience in life, right? Okay, it's hard to be cynical about an institution that you have been excluded from with prejudice. For a lot of people, love is an institution that they feel they have been excluded from with prejudice. It's very hard for them to have equanimity or detachment or see it for what it is. I mean, I can remember saying to people who are either less sexually experienced than me or who were actually virgins. I've known a couple people who remained virgins till they were like 25 or whatever. They remained virgins late into life. Do I know anyone who got to 30? I forget. I've known some people who stayed virgins late into life. And I remember saying to them, look, what you don't understand is that for people like me, having sex is like washing my hands. I do it multiple times a day, every day. Like if this is just part of the drumbeat of life. By the way, if I miss a day, it's for a reason. Oh no. I should say that every day, unless. That's the truth. All right. Sorry, if you've had a fight, if you've had a conflict with your boyfriend or girlfriend, if you're mad at each other or something, if there's some reason. But yeah, it's like, look, you can romanticize this, you can build it up in your mind, you can resent this, you can have all this stuff, right? Well, if you know someone who's Jewish, who grew up in an anti-Semitic society, if you know someone who's Black, they grew up in a phobic society towards them, an oppressive, racist society towards Black people, they may have all kinds of ideas about how great it would be to be able to play tennis or play golf in this exclusive club or this exclusive resort. They may build it up in their minds. It's very hard to have detachment and equanimity about an institution that is prejudicially excluded you. And people who are stuck being virgins, or people who've only had a few dysfunctional failed relationships, they never really experienced love and long-term meaningful high commitment relationships, like people for whom these things haven't worked out, they are going to look up at that golf club. They're going to look up at that tennis club. They're going to look at that elite institution and feel like, oh, you guys are having so much fun. It's so great in there inside that institution I can't get into. And you're going to resent it. And you're going to think about entitlement. And you're going to think about justice and injustice. And you're going to think, what is it about me or my appearance or how I was born that keeps me out of that club? But you're wrong. Right. That's why it's in the title. No, I know. And it's like you want socialism. Instead of socialize the D, you want to socialize the golf club. You want to have a socialist golf club. I can end the video there. We don't have to get into other topics of socialism. No, it's true. I mean, they are related. Where this idea of justice and justice. Yeah. By the way, there's a question here. Jasmine is live streaming right now. So plant-based, the guy who made this comment, the last time I looked at her channel, she was doing a 9-hour continuous live stream playing video games. 9 hours. I don't know if she gets up and goes to the bathroom. Pardon me. Okay, there's a lot of good questions here, guys. So look, I can throw away my plan for this video. I'm happy to just talk to you guys about whatever. I'm happy to talk about whatever Melissa wants. Sorry, Melissa, if you got more questions, like totally, you know what I mean. I don't have to force any direction or conclusion in this video. So Nacho asks, and it's been revealed that Nacho is female. Nacho identifies as female. Nacho asks, quote, Isel, I've heard you complain many times about people in general not being honest with others and with themselves. How are you not a misanthrope yourself? Okay, you know what the truth is, Nacho? I love people and I love life. And I can remember actually a fight I had with Melissa about this once, where Melissa said to me, she was being insulting to her. She didn't intentionally insulting way. She said, "Oh well, you know, you're a misanthrope and you don't like." I was like, "Who are you talking to?" At that point, I forget we've been together for 1 year or something. I was like, "You know me better than that. Like, who are you talking about right now?" That's not true of me at all. I remember a rap lyric. It's a nothing rap lyric from a nothing song. It's not a great song. But remember a rap lyric that just says, my life is so fucked up and I love it, And I've thought about that and I've felt that way at different stages of my life. Really, guys, I've been in a situation where I have nothing but a backpack. Members of the Communist Party and the government of Laos have just literally told me they're going to kill me. The only money I have in the world is in a bank account inside Laos. I got to get back in. I'm homeless. I'm jobless. Everything I own is in this one backpack. I don't have a bank account. I don't have a credit card, and it's like, and man, I'm so fucking happy. I'm so happy to really, I was smiling ear to ear that whole time. I've told you guys stories about this shit before. And, I remember I was laughing at my boss or my former boss. He's like, well, look, this is the situation. The government's threatening to kill you. You're getting kicked out of the country. You've lost your job. Like, this is the situation. And I was smiling and laughing. And he said, well, you're laughing now. And I said, no. I'm going to be laughing about this for the rest of my life. Meet up with me when I'm 65. If you think I'm going to be old and bitter, I'm still going to be laughing. No, I love my life and I love your life also. And there are some people who struggle to just not hate others. And I'm at the opposite extreme. I'm someone who has to struggle to not love others too much. You know what I mean? Because my natural inclination or tendency, I love other people. I love humanity, really. And I don't love them despite their complexity or despite their hypocrisy. I love them because of it. You know what I mean? Like I love the struggle. You know what I mean? I love what they're going through. I love the tragedy as well as the triumph. But you know what? I'll be honest, I love the tragedy more than the triumph. Most of my interests in life have focused on what's tragic. I don't research success stories. I research disasters. I mean, for real. So Melissa read that great article I wrote about, I've written articles about mass starvation and revolutions that went horribly wrong and utopias that went horribly wrong and terrible. Almost all of my research interests in life have been like the darkest aspects of human nature, including genocide, including, no, but I really love people and I really love, human nature. Now, look, guys, this is reciprocal. Anything you love, anything you appreciate, anything you approve of, it's going to be reciprocal with something else you despise. And I've always pointed out to people when they talk about loving one culture more than another. Like if someone says they love Chinese culture, well, that means you don't really like Indian culture. No, like there's some other culture you dislike. You making judgments about culture, it's going to be reciprocal. And look, guys, for me, the most horrifying image is drone footage of a herd of thousands of penguins on Antarctica, awking and waddling from side to side, foot to foot, milling around in circles. The socialization and herd behavior of penguins, right? It's horrifying. And what do these penguins do? They leap into the freezing cold ocean and kill whatever they can set their beaks on. They kill one fish after another just so they can get up out of that ocean and not starve for another day and waddle around in a circle with the other penguins squawking mindlessly, right? Human life robbed of its intelligence, human life robbed of its ability to reflect, to analyze, to philosophize, to appreciate, to think politically, even. is horrifying to me. What is animal in human nature in this sense? The mindless life of the herd. You can see it in penguins. You can see it in other mindless, relatively mindless animals. That's horrifying to me. And this is a big difference between me and a lot of vegans. A lot of vegans glorify, wild animals. They glorify the life. They glorify pet dogs and cats. When I look at a dog, when I look at a cat, when I look at penguins in the herd this way, for me, this is the most vivid thing because they're really what they're the way that they're squawking. It doesn't have the quality of a bird in the forest giving it a specific call with a specific meaning. Some of the more intelligent birds come much closer to us that way, by the way. Sorry, it's been proven. I could get into this. It's been proven that some birds, like ravens, are actually remarkably intelligent. They're not as smart as you and I, but they can't appreciate this live stream right now. But they do have some language. They have some ability to communicate a particular threat, a particular opportunity. They have the ability to communicate, hey, there's food here. They have the ability to communicate some of these things. No, but I, as much as I love the life of the mind, and that's why I love my own life and why I love your life. And like, there's really a sense in which I can say, I love you. And I love sharing my life with other people. And I love other people who are my fans coming into my life and sharing their life with me. And I'm going to be real with you. Even when I don't like them, really, there are people I don't like, and I still love them for sharing their struggle with me. You know what I mean? Like, I still love that they're going through it and we're going through it together in a sense. You know what I mean? I love all that, right? But it's all based on the life of the mind. It's all based on the intellect, and the intellect that separates us from animals and that contradistinguishes us from animals and makes animals in some ways our diametric opposite. You know what I mean? And instead, and whether it's the life of the penguin or the life of the polar bear, it's horrifying. So a polar bear gets up every day to kill something and doesn't even know what, prowling around. And you may not know this about polar bears, but it's so cold that, dead meat doesn't rot. A polar bear at all times is wearing a necklace of little frozen crumbs of dead animals, of the corpses of its prey. It clings to the fur, and it's so cold, it doesn't rot or drop away. And they stink. The unspeakable stench of a polar bear in the wild, to get up and mindlessly kill and never know why and never know what any of it means and never know and never question why you exist. It's horrifying. I love the life of the mind, and I totally despise a life, without a mind. So, yeah, I'm very much the opposite of a misanthrope. And frankly, even in my most cynical videos, most of which are humorous, when I'm joking in a kind of, when I'm joking in a provocative way, actually, I think you can see my love of humanity and love of life, shines through that. Great question. Fully raw Christina is still a virgin, right? Great question. Do you play Rainbow Six? Natasha says, "Oh, you know me." Natasha says, "Quote: I get the impression Eisel embraces suffering as a learning experience." Well, right, I do, but I can't embrace it for other people. Right? There are other people who would go through the same suffering I've been through or less, and they're just traumatized by it. They're just destroyed by it. For them, it's not a learning experience. Like the same thing can be a learning experience for me and not for other people. So yeah, I can't learn for you. I can't suffer for you. I can't suffer with you even. You know what I mean? But yes, for me, that is exactly true. And I really fashioned that philosophy before I ever got involved with Buddhism. In some ways, it's also the opposite of Buddhism, I'd say. You know. Okay, guys. So we have a complaint from someone that YouTube keeps censoring his question. Well, why don't you find a way to rephrase it in a way that won't be censored? What am I supposed to tell you? Find a way to state it that doesn't involve curse words. Okay. Yeah. All right, guys. So I'm happy to talk about whatever's in your mind. I think I'll really briefly roll on to the other question that I had, and then call this tonight, because it is about socialism. So look, I had a question following up. I have a couple of new viewers, by the way, from India and Sri Lanka. I'm happy to have them. There have been times in my channel when I considered, really intentionally trying to court the larger audience that was offered by India and dealing with some of the political questions over there. And I think it is interesting that people who have a Hindu or Buddhist cultural background, they often relate to me positively, even though I'm a nihilistic atheist, even though I'm a very harsh critic of both Hinduism and Buddhism, because they see in me some of those same ethical qualities of uprightness and steadfastness and some of those puritanical moral qualities that they value in their own tradition. So I'm happy. However, it's also true that the questions I've gotten lately from my new viewers or my new fans from India or Sri Lanka, they're phrased in a way that actually makes it difficult for me to understand what they're getting at. So one of those questions I answered earlier was concerning the wealth of nations. Why is it, or how is it, that there's this astounding inequality in wealth between different countries? And of course, India itself was very much the main question on the table. Now, I made an earlier video attempting to answer why. I attempted to talk through some of those things at different levels and from different angles, or what have you. But I got a further reply saying, no, that really didn't answer my question at all. And fair enough, but I calls them like I sees them. Like I again, the way some of these people use the English language, or what it is they're insinuating, or how they frame their argument, it might be a little strange to me. But this person was really wanting me to get into the question of why and how Japan, for example, had achieved this kind of wealth. Let's say California also. What were the sacrifices, or what were the strategic decisions that made it possible to achieve extraordinary, even opulent wealth in some places and not others, given that, broadly speaking, especially talking about these large parts of the Earth's surface, you have the same kind of natural resources involved. Like, if you're talking about Africa as a whole and kind of India and Pakistan as a whole, like sort of the subcontinent, talking about, well, Japan is actually the worst off in terms of natural resources. We're not comparing the Arctic Circle. We're not comparing Greenland to Africa. But, well, it's not, you can grow rice anywhere. You can farm chocolate anywhere it's hot enough. Okay, bad example. The point is, we're not looking at a situation where there's some simple material factor you can point to and say, oh, well, you could only grow cotton in one of these places, and cotton is the secret to wealth, or oil, that drilling oil is the secret to wealth or something. So this person is really wanting me to talk more specifically about this kind of wealth inequality. So now, again, I do think that, well, too bad. It's too bad that people can't participate in these discussions. Okay. So this comes back to the same kind of resentment that is often either implicitly or explicitly at the basis of complaints against capitalism, complaints about inequality, complaints about injustice, such as we talked about earlier in this video. And very often people haven't examined what their assumptions are of what justice would be, right? So whenever you narrow it down to talk about any one particular industry, it's soon revealed just how absurd these assumptions are, whether they're proposed by people who are self-consciously socialist or not. There are all kinds of people who really feel morally that India ought to be just as wealthy as Japan, or they should both be equally mediocre. They should be made level, so that Japan is less wealthy and India is wealthier, so that the extremes of wealth and poverty, are limited. Okay, so here's the problem. The problem is time. Can you imagine a world in which Hollywood, California, did not have any competitive advantage in the film industry, but in which each and every city in India, each and every city in Europe, each and every city in China, each and every city in Africa had an equal apportionment of the film industry. Talk about socialize the D. You want to talk about socializing the film industry? This is an interesting example to think through, because if we said this about gold mining or the oil industry, right away it would seem impossible. You say, well, gold isn't located everywhere, right? Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to tell you this. You may not know this. You may not have researched this. There is only one competitive advantage that Hollywood, California ever had in the history of the film industry. One of the reasons I know this, it was something I was interested in many, many years ago. I read the autobiography of Charlie Chaplin. It was very striking to me that he described what Hollywood was like when the streets were empty, when there were paved streets and street lamps and empty blocks after empty block, when the city had just sort of the plan had been drawn on a grid on the map and had been yet to fill in with buildings. The film industry was there. He started in the black and white silent film era. He started in England and then went to Hollywood. He was part of the kind of pioneering generation, and everyone knew. And he described Beverly Hills being literally hills. Like there was a time when there were just hills there. There were no houses, there were no shops. Like he was there when that, but everyone knew how enormous this film industry was going to be, and that's where it was going to be. So I looked into the economics of that. It's just something that interested me back at the time. It still interests me now in some ways. Okay. At that time, there was one advantage Hollywood, California had, and that was sunlight. The quality of the actual film in the cameras was much worse in Charlie Chaplin's heyday. Of course, during his life, all these things improved. That was silent film, the silent black and white film. They needed incredibly intense light. And you guys may not know this. They also used incredibly intense makeup, where like the contrast between black and white on people's faces was also like often would look ridiculous in real life, but that's what would turn up well on camera and so on. They use this really stark, extreme contrast of makeup and so on. And you needed really bright light with no clouds and, of course, no rain. That was the only advantage Hollywood, California had. Why is it that people in China still watch movies made in Hollywood today? What is the advantage? What is it that cannot be distributed equally around the world? And then secondly, this is really the more subtle one. Because these things exist in time, right? Why is it you can't just go to an empty valley in India where today there are nothing but hills and start building new roads and start putting up lampposts and start building sound stages and say, hey guys, this is the start of a whole new film industry? It can never happen twice, right? It can never happen again. There was one opportunity at one time and in one place, right? And even though people in China don't speak English, they really don't. They're watching those films either dubbed in Chinese or subtitled in Chinese. It's a huge disadvantage, right? You still can't reproduce the competitive advantages that Hollywood has in China. They're trying. They will try, right? Now, this pattern, broadly speaking, is what happens again and again in all industries, and not just cultural industries, as we say, not just openly and obviously creative industries. I mean, in a sense, all industries are creative. I spoke to an expert. It's not worth telling the whole story. And he claimed that the crucial factor that kept fashion and design rooted in Milan was the number of craftsmen and small industrial shops making molds, making these I was going to say high tech. They're not really high tech, making these crucial elements that the design industry needs, the manufacturing industry needs at a really high quality. There are guys who do certain kinds of sculpting and certain kinds of technical jobs. There's a cluster of skilled people in Milan. Some of them attached more to the fashion industry, some industrial design, But he's saying Milan has these advantages. And it's true. They've held on. What was the advantage Milan had 500 years ago or something? It's not just the fashion industry. There are all these things in Milan. Why can't we just do that again in India? Why can't we just... Even within China, I lived through really the birth and death of this kind of optimism. You guys may or may not know this story. But when the communist government of China decided to basically revive capitalism under communist tyranny, basically, right? When they decided to do that, the place with the most spectacular economic growth and overall transformation was Shanghai. And everybody saw it. I mean, first, a lot of Chinese people visited, but it was on TV, it was in magazines, and everyone in China was being told, this is the future. Shanghai happened once. And everyone in China was planning for and getting ready for it. Everyone was building roads that led nowhere. Like literally, it's like I just described building roads through the hills of Beverly Hills when there's nothing there but hills, roads through green grass fields and so on. There was this optimism because people thought, oh, now that this happened in Shanghai, next it's going to happen in 10 more cities and 100 more cities. There's going to be Shanghai everywhere. There's going to be the Shanghaiification of all of China. And it never happened because what happened in Shanghai could only happen once, even in an economy as enormous as China, even in an economy with as much growth as China, right? For all of those industries, it could only happen once. Okay, you want to talk about exceptions? There are some industries where it happened twice. There are 2 places on planet Earth where they make racing bicycles that are good enough to be used in races. One is Italy, the other is Taiwan. Do you want to be the 3rd place? Do you want to risk? You want to try to do it in India? You want to compete with Italy and Taiwan? Really? Good luck. By the way, I'm not saying your business will fail. I'm not saying you'll be a failure. I'm saying you will fail to reproduce Hollywood. You'll fail to reproduce Shanghai. You'll fail to be the greatest center for this industry in the world. But totally, you could have some success, and many do. I mean, all of those businesses. It's not that there's zero filmmaking on the rest of planet Earth, right? Now, the clustering effect that happens in economics, film is a great example of. All right, why does Hollywood matter? Hollywood is where the casting takes place. Hollywood is where the auditioning takes place. Hollywood is where the investment is arranged in advance for projects that haven't been made yet. There is no gold mine. There is no oil rig. There's nothing physically linking it to that place. And to my knowledge, something like 20 years after the film industry started, the reliance on sunlight was already over. It was really like there's just this early period where they really needed very bright sunlight, partly because the quality of the film was so bad. And having sunlight is still nice, but very rapidly the quality of the film and lighting and all kinds of other things. Soon enough, it was certainly possible to have the film industry based in Connecticut. But Connecticut could never be what Hollywood already was because Hollywood already existed. Success in one place completely snuffs out the possibility of success in others. Now, this is not completely alien to left-wing discourse. Melissa read some Karl Marx lately. So the concept that Marxists adapt and discuss and propound to deal with this is the concept of super profits. So Marx doesn't know much about economics. He really doesn't. But one of the notions he popularized is that in various industries, you go through what normal economists would call a sunrise and sunset phase in the industry, but that there's this initial period of the opportunity for super profits, for making amazing profits when something is brand new. So I would say a textbook example of this, although it may be misleading in some ways, was the boom in boxed cereal in the United States. So Cheerios, Corn Pops, Frosted Flakes, this kind of thing, right? Now, as I recall, the original one was Corn Flakes and Grape Nuts. A lot of you guys, they don't know Grape Nuts, but that was one of the originals, right? And I'm sorry, I forget the name. There was one town in the United States. There's a famous thing. Same way there was a gold rush. There was a cereal rush. There was this boom. There was this brief period where there's one town, and they were paying people these really high wages to come and work in the cereal industry there and so on. So this is basically the Marxist stereotype, that there's a brief period when something is a new invention, a new discovery, a new horizon opens up. And you have a brief period where it's super profitable, and then that closes up. Now, I basically think Marx is dumb. And I think that even his analysis of this one issue is dumb. But it's significant to note here because this is the sense in which socialists and left-wing people are aware of this or grudgingly admit it, right? Whether we're talking about the fashion industry or the textile industry, like mass production of textile, or the difference between, well, design takes place in one place and manufacturing takes place in another, or, the difference between car factories in Detroit in the glory days of Detroit and, a later period when this has been ground down to people being paid minimum wage, and there's no longer the kind of optimism, attached to this. Socialists have a vocabulary for dealing with these things that's derivative of Marx in this way. Okay. But the truth is, it's not that making a movie was more profitable when Charlie Chaplin was alive. It's not that making a movie reached a larger audience when Charlie Chaplin was alive, right? Think about it. When Charlie Chaplin had a hit film, what percentage of the population of planet Earth saw that film? And today, when you have a real hit film, what percentage? I mean, even within Europe, even within America, Africa, China, the whole world, right? The number of people watching and consuming movies and paying for it and the revenue generated by it. It's not the case that early period of opportunity is more profitable, not by definition. Anyway, it could be. And look, even with this thing with boxed cereal, well, if they charged $100 for a box of cereal, nobody would buy it. That would be super profitable, right? You're like, okay, the early days of boxed cereal when they could charge a really high price. No, the whole reason why people were excited about it was that it was cheap. It had to compete with bread. If bread is cheaper than cereal, nobody's going to eat bread. Nobody's going to eat cereal. They're going to buy bread. But no. So the product is cheap, right? So again, Marx's analysis, it's profoundly misleading, right? But the power that exists in that early period is precisely to initiate the clustering effect, right? So you have one town that produces boxed cereal. So what do you get there? You get a clustering. Now you start to build railroad tracks that bring in the right kind of wheat in bulk and dump it into a silo and put it into a processor in a huge scale, billions of tons per year or whatever, vast amounts. And then you have a big machine that dries it and threshes it and processes it and bakes it, extrudes it, and so on. Oh, okay. So you have all this machinery, you have certain kinds of skilled engineers and laborers that are all brought together in one place. What is it they have in Milan that's so special? Ultimately, it's the people. Ultimately, it's the clustering of skilled people. People who can make the right kind of plastic mold, the right type of tool and die machining, who can do everything you need to make a high-end, whether it's a designer purse that has little metal elements in it, or designer clothing, or designer computers, whatever is designer shoes. There's a clustering of small businesses providing these skilled services that are all in one place at one time. What is it that Hollywood has? The actual camera equipment, it's all made in China now. If you want to buy it, good luck buying a camera that is not made in China. Some of them, they have components made in Germany. They have components. I admit there's some high-end stuff that's not made in China. But I'm just saying generally computer technology and certainly cheap cameras, all this stuff is made in China. It's not made in California, but it's not like the advantage, that's where the cameras are made, or, you can't get a camera anywhere else. Are you kidding me? There's a clustering effect. Oh, well, they have the right casting agents. They have the right auditions. They have the right lawyers. They have the right investment people. They have a group of skilled people coming together in one place at one time, right? And actually, when you take it apart piece by piece, even when you look at the sound stage, even when you look at the actual physical enclosed space to shoot the film in, there's nothing special there. There's nothing special at all, right? So this is the horrifying, terrifying sense in which the socialist dream of equality between Japan and India can never be realized. It's the same sense in which the film industry can never be redistributed from Hollywood to Topeka, Kansas. It can never be reallocated evenly across the United States of America, right? And the clusters where innovation and design and these things happen, where the high profit end of the spectrum happens, You want to talk about financial investment and banking? Where does that happen? Can you redistribute that? Can you redistribute Wall Street? Can you redistribute the District of London that's referred to as the city? Can you even redistribute the decision making for the people who are making money on the stock market out of China and India and Africa and so on? The investors who are bankrolling the gold mines and so on. The clusters of skilled labor. Once you've established that pattern, once you've established that competitive advantage in one place, even if, like Hollywood, California, there's no advantage but the sunlight, right? What is the advantage of Wall Street? Nothing. What do you think? What you think the street itself somehow, is as an advantage? And yet, once you've got that cluster there, right? It's not because of Karl Marx's theory of super profits, right? It's incredibly difficult to redistribute that or change the pattern. And people will put up with unbelievable disadvantages. Think about how expensive it is to live in Manhattan Island or to commute to come into Manhattan Island every day just to deal with Wall Street. Anyone could stand there and say, hey, look, this would be better if we could do it in Topeka, Kansas. Let's break up Wall Street or relocate Wall Street, right? There's a clustering effect that's achieved. And then that advantage, I'm not going to say it lasts forever. It lasts until something unbelievably cataclysmic happens. Something like World War II, something like a communist revolution. Something that just completely destroys the fabric of the economy you've got and the supply chains that link these things that create these clustering effects. Yeah.
I just wanted to share one example that I was reminded of in what you were talking about. So around the country in America, there are casinos.
It's a great example.
You can find a casino every 50 miles in most places.
Yep.
Why is Las Vegas the center? Why did it become this?
Yeah.
There was one period of time
Right.
where it was.
It's a great example. I didn't think of that. Go on. Yeah.
Compare it to
Right.
Atlantic City,
Right.
which has failed to.
Okay. So Melissa, this is actually Melissa. Really, I would not have thought of this. Okay, this is great. So Melissa points out that today in 2021, there are casinos in every corner of the United States of America. So like on the East Coast, every Indian reservation has a casino. I remember that in the desert too, as you're driving, there are casinos everywhere. There's a casino in Detroit. There's a casino in Windsor, Ontario. Like it's on both sides of the border. I don't know why you bother, but there, like wherever you live in the United States of America, it's a very short drive to get to the nearest state. We have a casino in Vancouver. I think it's despicable, but we do. Oh, so now there are casinos everywhere. So today there is no special competitive advantage held by Las Vegas, Nevada, except that it still has this clustering effect, right? It still has this knock-on effect because they were the first place to do it. They were the early adopter. They created the pattern. So that's a great example. Now let's get a little bit darker. There are beautiful women everywhere. There's prostitution in Las Vegas, Nevada. They were the first to legalize prostitution. There's no talent there that exists that's missing elsewhere. It's not like there are more beautiful women in Nevada than in California or anywhere else, right? Oh, and frankly, today, of course, I think if we're not being too naive, you can find prostitution everywhere. But Las Vegas is the world's premier destination for prostitution, right? So there's nothing special. There's no advantage they have in terms of gambling. You can play the same deck of cards. You can play the same game with anywhere in the world. There's no advantage that they have in terms of prostitution, right? And yet this is a worldwide leading destination for this. And again, it would be very hard to redistribute that. People have tried. There's a lot of money in it. People are trying to redistribute the gambling. It's true, right? To make it more evenly spread. I'm sure there are a lot of places in India too that would like to share in these vices and make money out of them, right? But it's good. Now, short of a civil war or a revolution or some really calamitous event completely destroying Las Vegas, even then, probably if an earthquake destroyed it, probably they'd rebuild and everyone would still go. They wouldn't go, oh yeah, we're going to show we still support Las Vegas after the earthquake destroyed it. Probably it would keep going on. Yeah. And actually, I think a really good comparison would be to the Caribbean. I think there were a lot of islands in the Caribbean that would love to have the gambling tourism and the prostitution, just even Americans coming over, but they're not able. Okay, now look, beautiful women all over the world. Thailand. Thailand's the world's destination for prostitution. They did it first, right? They were the early adopters. They created, they led the way for the 20th century and 21st century culture of global sex tourism, of this model of prostitution. Obviously, prostitution has always existed everywhere, but in terms of being a destination for organized international prostitution, right? And again, it'd be very hard. Now, look, I am going to assert that there are beautiful women all over the world, but I just think it would be ridiculous to pretend that this is because there is any kind of scarce resource that exists in Thailand that doesn't exist in Iran. Lots of beautiful women in Iran. But for some reason, hey, it's the same climate in Malaysia, beautiful beaches in Malaysia. For some reason, it's not Malaysia and so on. It's Thailand. So yeah, both gambling and prostitution, those are actually really telling examples. However, look, so what's the point? Okay, so look, sorry, maybe I've done a bad job explaining this particular aspect. But look, you have to add up cluster by cluster all of the things that Japan was the first in and Japan was the best in, and where they are still the best in the world, where they still have that cluster there, right? Japan was the first country in Asia to make steel boats, not wooden boats, steel-hulled boats. A lot of things are connected to that, right? Like including the modern sheet metal industry itself. Like you think about all the things you need coal, you need factories, you need a certain kind of social organization, you need a certain kind of economy, you need a stock market. Like think about all the things that had to be modernized for Japan to make its own steel, start making its own steel-clad boats. Japan was the first country in Asia to manufacture its own airplanes. Forget that, you know what I mean? They weren't the first country in the world. No, they didn't invent the airplane. They didn't invent the ironclad boat or the steel-clad boat. No, but they were the first in a huge part of the world, and they became the leaders of Asia and all those things. And despite the absolutely ruinous period of the Japanese Empire, in which they bankrupted themselves and massacred others. So the period of the Japanese Empire was bad for everyone, including the Japanese. It really was. But despite that clustering effect is so strong, it's so powerful, that Japan is still the leader in innumerable industries throughout Asia. Again, cars, airplanes, boats, what have you. Anyway, sorry, as you go through, video games. Who makes the best? Video games are a great example of that clustering effect. So with video games, it wasn't just one cluster. Video games and early computer programming technology. I was talking to Melissa about this a couple weeks ago. But, and I was explaining to her, actually, England played a really unique role in the history of computer programming, video games included. But video games, computer technology, and then, this whole range of early console technology. And so a lot of it happened in England. What advantage does England have? It's not like a gold mine. There isn't a microchip mine where people go down and mine the microchips. So England had an advantage. No, obviously it's cultural. It's a clustering effect. It's educational. It's attitudinal. There were all these things that came together where England really had something important going at the dawn of the computer era. Now, how big was England's, software or hardware sector? How big is it today compared to Silicon Valley in California? Compared to Japan? Of course, it's small, but there are a few different clusters around the world this way. And everything I just said about Hollywood, we can repeat about Silicon Valley, California. Everything I said about Wall Street, I can repeat about Silicon Valley, California. I think you would find, I'm sorry, I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't know what the name of the neighborhood is in Tokyo, but I know if you look at the neighborhoods in Tokyo where they have the cluster of software designers and so on, where they have the software and hardware industries located, the advantage that Japan has, most obviously emblematized by companies like Sega, Nintendo, SNK, but so many countries, so many innovative companies in the history of computer technology, software, and hardware. Japan also had a tremendous cluster this way. Okay, you want to take it away from them? Again, it's not that you can't compete. It's not that you can't succeed. But there is no filmmaker in India who can be so successful that he's going to cause the film industry to relocate from Hollywood to India. And even if you did, even if that happened, it wouldn't redistribute evenly around the world. You're going to have this kind of cluster. So Japan was the first in so many things, even though they were devastated in World War II. And they were by the way, they weren't just devastated by losing World War II. They were also devastated by their period of winning it. During the period where the empire was expanding, that was also ruinous for them. Kind of a topic for another day. But winning can be bad for you as well as losing. And just so you guys know, in war and empire and politics, actually, you could say this about Afghanistan. The Americans kept winning and kept losing more money, right? That they won at $10 billion a year, and then they were losing at $100 billion a year. It's interesting, very different example, though, as a general principle. But when you look at it and you add it up sector by sector, cluster by cluster, what is the reality today? The reality is that there are brilliant, talented people in India who learn how to become computer programmers because they want to get rich. And they apply for jobs in Silicon Valley, California, and they apply for jobs in Japan, and once in a while, they apply for jobs in England. It's a much smaller cluster. That's what they look up to. That's what they look forward to. And even if they personally are tremendously successful, they could be successful. They go away to work in Japan for a few years and then come back to India. They may just stay in India and make a tremendously successful company within India. This pattern is going to continue to perpetuate itself. Let's say, so you're a software developer in India and you say, okay, well, my company is really successful, but you know what my biggest problem is? Whenever I get these talented young people and I give them a job, they work here for a couple of years, but the whole time they're working for me, they're applying for jobs in Silicon Valley, California, and they're applying for jobs in Tokyo, Japan. And as soon as they get an offer from one of them, they run away and leave. Now, two things there. You say, in India, I can't offer to pay them enough money to stay here instead of going to California. But you know what you're also going to find in these things? You're going to find you're in a situation where it's like, even if I can pay them enough, even if I can pay them more, they'll still leave me because they want to be in Silicon Valley. Like if they're earning the same amount of money or slightly less, they want to be where the action is. They want to be at that cluster of creativity. The same way that you can't pay someone enough money to stay in India if what they want is to be in Los Angeles, if what they want to be is in California, to be in the greatest center of creativity, at the leading edge, where the really important decisions are made for the greatest creative cluster in that industry in the history of the world, okay? So when you engage in not class analysis of economics, but cluster analysis, right? You start to understand why it is and how it is that there can be a gold mine in Laos. Laos is a poverty-stricken country in Southeast Asia, just north of Cambodia. There can be a gold mine in Laos, and yet mysteriously, most of the people who get rich from it are Australian, because it's an Australian gold mining company. It's a stock traded on the Australian Stock Exchange, right? And you go and visit the mine, it seems like all of the engineers, all of the scientists, they aren't local Laotian people. The security guard is Laotian. There are some people doing, low-level minimum wage jobs there. But wow, isn't that funny? The first world countries, whether it's Japan or Australia or Europe, the rich keep getting richer, even when the gold being mined is Laotian gold. That this inequality created by the clustering effects, and you could say the Japanese economy, because they have no natural resources, they have no natural advantages. It's the sum of so many clusters of excellence, of skilled people, of unique services that are in one place and not another. That when you add this up, it's a form of dynamic, self-perpetuating inequality that gets worse and worse, frankly, forever. And one of the reasons why that happens is that nobody, neither left nor right, neither socialist nor capitalist, neither liberal nor conservative, nobody has ever been trying to solve it.